welcome to this episode of Inside Embedded, where Steve and I are going to chat with some friends that we have in the marketplace. Specifically today, we are featuring our good friends at Unit. And two individuals I'd like to highlight from Unit are Amanda Swoverlin and Mr. Joe Onke. Both of these individuals I'll allow to introduce themselves, and we'll chat about the journeys to Unit and the roles that they play at Unit today. But I do want to go ahead and thank both of you for joining us here and joining us at such an exciting time in the Unit journey. We'll get to that, but before we do, for anyone that's watching us and is curious about this topic of embedded banking or BaaS, I guess I'd like to begin by understanding who Unit is, especially if for players that are new to this space. So, Amanda, I may start with you first of all. Would you care to tell us a little bit about your role? It's vital at Unit. You have a very fancy title. I think we'll all discover. So, Miss Amanda Swoverlin, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about who Unit is?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having us today. We're excited to be here and to chat with you. So yeah, I'm Amanda Swoverlin. I am the Chief Compliance Officer at Unit. I don't know if that's a fancy title or one that generally makes people run away.
Me.
But it is what it is. Yeah, and I've been with Unit for 5 years. I won't steal Joe's thunder, but he was here just slightly before me. But we're both at our 5 year mark here on the Unit journey. But really quickly, just who is Unit? What is it that we do, and what is it that we don't do? So in the most basic form, Unit's a technology company. We power scalable, reliable, and high quality financial service products in partnership with our bank customers in various brands that are in the marketplace. We have white label banking applications. We have oversight and risk management tools. We have APIs, and we're essentially a digital banking core that can sit right alongside a bank's traditional core, whether that be one of the three main legacy cores or another core that a bank may have. We can sit right alongside that core with no necessary integrations into that core. Oftentimes in the marketplace, there's a lot of different terminologies that I think we all hear and are used to hearing in this space that can also cause a lot of confusion, right? A lot of times people will use this terminology called middleware. Um, that term, what does it mean? In our view of things, Unit doesn't sit in the middle of anything. We're a digital banking core with APIs that connect in, and our banks and the brands and the clients work directly with each other. They talk to each other. They have contracts with each other. They're using our technology platform to, in collaboration, offer these products together. Um, there's concepts of some players in this space may have a broker dealer license or may have MSB licenses. That's not something that Unit has. So we are not moving money on behalf of anybody within the ecosystem. Some players in the ecosystem before and even today do have those licenses and more complex natures that come along with them. Those are all totally fine structures. It's just you need to have the appropriate risk and control mechanisms in place if you're going to do that. Unit does not have those licenses. We do not move money on behalf of anybody. We are not intermediating the movement of money or any relationships. It's something I've said from the very early days for any bank that met me early, and Joe probably heard me say this a million times on every bank call that we would start, is we are not a replacement for bank oversight. I have said to every bank during initial calls, I am not your bank's compliance officer for this. We're going to help you build and rely on, like, we're going to help you build the product based on our knowledge. We're going to offer really great technology that will help you streamline your oversight and help build in controls into the system. Some things that have never existed in the marketplace before, but we are not a replacement for what your bank needs to do for this. So again, very simply, I could have answered that question by saying we are a technology provider and an infrastructure provider. But I think it's important to talk about the nuances because there are a lot of players in this space and everybody offers something slightly different.
Let me follow up with just with one question here, Amanda. So a term that I'm often hearing in this space, I'm sure everyone is this concept of a side core. Would you put unit in that category or
I
not?
would. Yeah, I would.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that. I'm going to direct this next question to Joe. Normally, Joe, I would go ladies first with this one, but Mr. Joe Onkey, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, kind sir. And since Amanda already hinted that you're slightly a veteran employee over her at Unit, I'm going to ask you a little bit about your journey. So we've heard Amanda introduce Unit. How in the world did you learn about Unit and why did you opt to pursue a career there?
Yeah, thanks, Stacy, Steve. Thanks so much for having us. It's wonderful to join you. We're really excited to be on the podcast. We're really excited for amBaaSsador. I think it's a very valuable and needed initiative, I think, in our space to help banks better understand embedded finance. So thanks for leading the charge there. Thanks for having us today. I think you know my background is in law compliance consulting. Before I joined Unit, I was a principal consultant at Promontory Financial Group, which was a global boutique regulatory consultancy, later acquired by IBM. And a lot of my practice focused on sort of bank strategy broadly, including a lot of like consumer compliance and eventually a lot of like technology partnerships. And so I did a bunch of work sort of at the intersection of fintech and regulatory compliance and bank strategy. I actually started my career at the CFPB as part of the stand-up team, so I have sort of a regulatory and compliance background as well. Part of my background is also I did go to law school, but was never a practicing lawyer. So I'm sort of a perpetually recovering lawyer, as they say. Um, but I joined Unit because of my experience at Promontory just showed me very much how banks and tech companies, even when they wanted to partner together, had just a lot of challenges, both like structural and sort of interpersonal, to sort of overcome, right? Even when they wanted to partner together, those partnerships could take many months, if not years, to actually materialize and execute on. And a lot of it was just the challenge that banks had and tech companies had in speaking the same language. Tech company builders are used to building against the best software, against the best APIs in the world, which is not something that banks, traditionally necessarily offer. Whereas banks are really excellent at, risk management and compliance and regulatory relationships, um, and have sort of they have to make sure that they are complying with the alphabet soup of regulations, which is not something that tech company builders typically have to manage. And so, I really did see an opportunity, I think, for a really high quality technology platform to sort of work with both sides of that equation to help make those relationships stronger, more scalable, and more sustainable over time. So actually got introduced to our co-founders Itai and Duran through mutual friend Alex Acree, who, fun fact, later became our chief legal officer at Unit. So fintech is a small world. Um, but he introduced us back in the fall of 2019, and I just got to know Itai and Duran over a period of time, and understood what they were building, and understood how it really fit the gap that I think I had seen in sort of the work I was doing as a consultant. I got really excited about them as people, about the culture, about the company that they were building, about their vision, and really wanted to join them. And was so motivated, in fact, by what they were building that I left my very stable consulting job in the middle of the pandemic to go and join them as their first employee. It was I never looked back. And it's been an amazing journey ever since. Another fun fact is that I really shouldn't have been the first employee. Amanda should have been the first employee. They
Oh,
told me that they wanted to start by hiring a chief compliance officer, which was something that I wholeheartedly supported and told them they should do it. And they had this amazing woman in Minnesota all lined up to join, but Amanda, was far more reasonable than I was, and decided that maybe jumping into a new thing in the middle of a pandemic wasn't the best idea for her and her family. But
I still did it. I still
yeah,
did it just a few months after I think he was hoping I would have.
Well, I think what really just tipped you over the edge was when you heard that Joe was going to be at UNIT, right, Amanda? You're like, well, if Joe's
Absolutely.
going to be there, I'm in. This is
Yeah,
amazing.
it wasn't the 24-hour almost shifts of having to process PPP loans over several months, being at a community bank that tipped me over the edge.
I,
Sorry to my former employer, but no,
so
it was a great experience.
Oh, I think if we peeled back the layers, any sleeves, you'd have scars from PPP. I'm sure of it. Oh my goodness. Well, I am so glad that your journey led you to UNIT, Amanda, and that you get to work alongside Joe, and that you guys really have this fun story that you get to talk to each other about. But the story in my head is Amanda joined UNIT whenever she heard that Joe was going to be there, whenever he was
Yeah,
on board. Well, I think
absolutely.
and Steve, I promise I'm going to let you talk in just a minute. Being married to me, he realizes how tough that can be sometimes. But I am so excited and just dying to talk about this actually, it's not even an enhancement, this new announcement that Unit made recently about a product called Ready to Launch. And I think, Joe, you mentioned when you were talking about how when you were coming to Unit, you were just so motivated and inspired by the mission and what they were building. I got to tell you, whenever I was reading up on Ready to Launch, I was inspired and motivated by Unit's vision and what they're bringing to the marketplace for banks that are considering embedded banking. So, with that lead in, you guys, I guess what I'm curious to know is let's start with the basics here. What is Ready to Launch, and why in the world did Unit decide to build it?
Yeah, Joe, I can jump
yeah,
in.
we didn't coordinate. Yeah, after you,
No,
Amanda,
that's
please.
okay. I should have directed it towards one of you. Amanda, what is Ready to Launch? We'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I'll start with the maybe the origin story of how this came to be. And it really starts with why Unit was founded in the beginning, right? When I also in addition to knowing Joe was here, I saw the challenges firsthand being a chief risk officer at a community bank in this particular space. And every time a new partner would come on, there would be a different KYC stack. There would be a different dispute management stack. There would be a different pick any element of the typical program management construct. And for every partner you had, you would have a different risk surface areas for each one of those things. And so if you had 10 partners, you could have 50 different risk vectors that you would have to account for, and that becomes really hard to scale over time. And everybody knows fintech is a game of scale if you truly want to be able to leverage the economics that come with that. And so there had to be a better way. There had to be a better way to insert more simplicity into this marketplace and have better technology and allow banks to scale safely and responsibly within the space. And so as we've built Unit as that tech structure, we really looked to consolidate and streamline a lot of the processes that used to be bespoke in the system. So, for example, dispute management, right? Instead of a client or a brand, we'll just use any type of brand that is a vertical SaaS company. Um, Instead of them going and having to find somebody to do disputes and somebody to figure out who the vendors are to do the identification to comply with the bank's records, and then pick the laundry list of other different elements that they would have to come up with, we consolidate that into one system, right? So there's a selection of vendors that can do the KYC checks that's already built in. So the bank can go in and approve who those vendors are. They can set the settings of who those vendors are. It's very clear to the client how those checks are going to be done. But the bank at the end of the day can log in to one dashboard for every partner they have and be able to see. They know who all the vendors are. They can see all the settings. They can see every application in real time. They can see what failed. They can see every document. No more going and logging into 10 different bespoke dashboards. You have one central location. Not only do you have a dashboard, but you get daily files that come with all of this information that can then be uploaded into your BSA AML system so you can do your monitoring, your risk rating, anything that you want to do for your compliance management program. Statement generation is another great example. You don't want every different brand calculating APYs and generating statements. All of that is part of our system, just like a Jack Henry or a Fiserv or any of the major cores will generate statements. That's what this platform is going to be able to do. So it was really about bringing everything together from all of these different bespoke technology stacks into one stack to be able to consolidate that. And we had great success being able to do that. But there were still a few things that a tech company would have to do, a brand that would want to partner with one of the banks that was using our platform, is they would still have to do customer service. They would still, because they had access to customer information, they would need to have really robust information security policies and anything, because if you're touching main customer information, we all know the rules surrounding that. In marketing, right? Banks always reviewed the marketing materials and had the final say on what marketing materials would be, but they were coming from all of the different vectors. And so while we consolidated a lot, there were still things that were bespoke to each one of the clients. And so with Ready to Launch, we took that even further, right? And so with Ready to Launch, it's really a consolidated view of the only thing that changes in a program from what we call co-branders in this case, of anybody who want a client or a brand who wants to embed a financial product that we offer with our banks, is their logo and their brand. All of the limits are going to be the same. All of the marketing materials are a consistent package of marketing materials that are sent out by Unit's technology. So with Ready to Launch, we essentially took our other all of the other elements that the clients and the brands would still have to do. So like the marketing, the customer service, and the some of the information security platform elements, and Unit is now going to take some of those things in-house. And so there's going to be a consistent set of marketing materials that's sent out. There's going to be a consistent customer service. And there's going to be very restricted access to any customer information, right? And so the ability for customer information to be housed and maintained in one central location, and limiting access to that is also a key component of that. So again, the mission from the beginning was always to be able to consolidate and be able to find optimization and reduce the number of risk vectors that there are. The risk vectors remain. Banks still have to do the marketing reviews. They still have to do the InfoSec reviews and the customer service reviews. But the number of parties who are doing those types of things is drastically reduced. And we all know that while mistakes can happen with that one vendor, things can always happen, right? It's always better to oversee one vendor that's doing all of these things versus the multitude, right? In terms of being able to scale the programs and look at that. And so there's a lot of reasons why clients are going to be excited and brands are going to be excited about Ready to Launch, but we think it's equally as exciting for banks. And we actually issued, our blog. There's a blog post specifically targeted at banks and why we think that this is a really exciting time for banks, and why Ready to Launch can be a great segue for them to enter into this market, because it does offer a very tight, streamlined view of like how they can manage the process, and again, reducing the number of vendors that they have to take a look at while they manage it. They still have to manage it. They have to be super involved in it. They still have to do all of the things. Like, that doesn't go away. But again, it's trying to consolidate the number of risk vectors that are in a particular area. Joe, is there anything you'd add to that? I know that was a very compliance-based answer.
No, I think it was perfect. I think, what I would emphasize is, Stacy, one of your questions was sort of like, how does this sort of align with the mission, the vision of Unit, right? I see this very much as an expansion and a continuation of Unit's mission to enable really safe, scalable, but ultimately simpler ways to build financial services for the next 1,000, 10,000 builders in this space, right? So if Unit traditionally was about helping banks be able to support multiple different brands, but through one consistent system that provided really high quality compliance oversight, tooling, real time data, et cetera, through Unit.
Mm-hmm.
Ready to Launch takes that philosophy one step further by enabling banks to oversee multiple different brands through a single program. And that program, as Amanda said, has absolutely a consistent set of guardrails. It's a consistent box around each one of those brands. Same account structures, same limits, same KYC workflows, etc. KYB. Sorry, these are all small business accounts. Ready to Launch isn't for consumers, but the same CIP protocols is the point. So the goal here is safe and sustainable growth, both for tech companies and for banks. And I think Amanda said it as sort of a way to grow. Right? I think of this as an into embedded finance, both for tech companies and for banks. And one of the important things is that we built this because of a need that we had seen. First 4 years as Unit, we had successfully launched and served well over 100 different tech companies to build very bespoke programs on top of Unit's tech. And we continue to do that. And, we see a need for that in the market. But one thing we learned is that even though our platform made it simpler for them to build than it had been before, building against, legacy core systems of the banks. Lots of tech companies just don't have the spare resources. Even large companies, don't necessarily have the engineering resources internally that they want to dedicate and to pull off of their core products and to dedicate to building financial services. So being able to offer a very full scope, full service, very beautiful white labeled banking product that they can embed into their existing core products in a single line of code is incredibly attractive to many tech companies, not just small ones, but indeed the Series C, Series D, even public companies that we talk to, and really building that out. And then from a bank's perspective, as Amanda said, the ease of overseeing that single program is I think really attractive.
I could not agree more. And it is beautiful. The UI that I have seen represented online is a gorgeous, easy to use type of framework. I want to highlight something you mentioned. A single line of code. Also, you associate this with a very quick launch. When you use the name Ready to Launch, you're not joking, because I think what I have seen is a 3-week type of time frame to becoming operational. And I want to try, like, Steve, I'll allow you to pop in here, because one thing that you and I hear quite a bit in speaking with community bankers around the country that are looking just at embedded banking and exploring it, it's around the complexity, right, Steve? And I'm sure you went through that yourself in standing up a BaaS program, but um, I think that kind of leads into a question you and I had for these fine folks relative to complexity and how Ready to Launch addresses that. But I think I basically asked the question, but Steve, why don't you ask the question?
Um, so Joe, I'll send this one to you. How does Ready to Launch reduce the complexity? No.
Yeah, so I think obviously there's two ways to answer this question. There's the bank focused way. There's the tech company focused way. I'd say Amanda provided a lot of great examples already in terms of being sort of a prepackaged product that doesn't involve tech companies bringing potentially multiple different fourth parties to a relationship, and the having a white label product that is right off the shelf that the tech company doesn't have to spend time building an onboarding module, or doesn't have to spend time building a banking module, but instead they can just use what we have built using our 5 years of expertise and experience, and then to be able to put their product on it and embed it directly into their offering, I think is incredibly attractive, and reduces that complexity. There's another aspect of this that I'd mention as well, especially from a bank perspective, which is, and Steve, I think you know this well from building your own fintech program. When you were a banker yourself and in that seat. But I think that oftentimes banks have, you have to have sort of a VC mentality in a way when you're evaluating different potential partners, right? You're constantly inundated with applications from tech companies that say, "Hey, I'd love to build with you," and you get to sort of review these applications and have to, make guesses about which ones are going to be successful. And I can tell you, Amanda can tell you, definitely, from our perspective, right? We've seen plenty of examples over the past 4 or 5 years of companies that we thought were going to take off, maybe didn't in the way that we expected, and other companies that we thought, oh, they're interesting, but we're not sure how fast they're going to grow. Instead, grew really quickly and turned into some of our top five, top 10 clients. Um, so I think that puts the bank into the position of having to be a stock picker, right? And not necessarily knowing which ones are going to be the successful programs. I think with ready to launch, we can help to solve some of that complexity, because banks get the benefit of being able to work with multiple different brands, but again, without having the overhead of having to evaluate all of their specific use cases and program types, not having to make sort of decisions about very bespoke workflows or very bespoke, onboarding flows. Not having to choose between, am I going to support features X, Y, and Z for this client versus A and B for this client, right? Every single brand that a bank supports comes in through the exact same box. Um, but you get to have the benefit of building relationships with the clients that you choose to work with. And over, a year or 2 years, you get to see how they grow and see how they operate, and you get to build a rapport and a trust with them. So that in the future, if that tech company decides, hey, I actually do want to take on maybe some more complexity. I do want to own some of the decisioning in my KYC, in my CIP workflow, or like I do want to own a little bit more of the front end. I do want to make some changes that are a little bit outside the box. At that point, the bank can choose to support or not support them, but at least they have the benefit of years of data and a relationship they've already built. So I think from that perspective as well, it's reducing the complexity of having to figure out at the jump which companies you want to work with versus not, and instead allows you to start building together in maybe a safer and more scalable way, on top of a platform. And then 2 years down the road, whatever, 3 years down the road, whatever the X is, to decide with the benefit of some hindsight, which ones you then want to support on a custom path.
So along those same lines, like how does that look for we've heard on-ramp a few times in this conversation. So if I'm a bank with an existing program, or I'm a tech company with an existing program, is there an opportunity to reduce the complexity of those existing ones, or is this like is it just a whole nother program I'm going to have to support as a bank? Or what are your thoughts on that piece?
I can jump in on that one.
Amanda, I'll ask you that question.
Um, so if you're a bank that is already offering custom programs, whether a bank that's already with Unit or a bank that is talking to us and considering us, but they have a different model that they've used in the past. This can be supplementary to that. It is not, they'd have to integrate with us to have all of the processing and everything. but it can stand next to, right? They're going to still manage all of the program and everything else that they have for other programs. But they can bring this on and start with ready to launch and kind of the box that comes along with that. And then if they decide that they want to move into custom over time, where a really big program takes off and they're like, you know what, we do need the different limits or we do need those different things. It's very easy for them to roll into that because it's all in the same tech stack. And they're not going to have to issue new debit cards. There's not going to be a new routing number. Everything is already there and is already built in. We started with the most complicated thing first that we built, and then we're able to build into this over time because this is where we saw quite frankly, all of the demand was going. And it's been really successful. And for our existing bank partners that we started with on custom, this has been a really great ad for them to build in. They're already familiar with the system and how things work. And then they're like, oh wait, you're going to make it more simple and you're going to reduce and control more. One thing we consistently hear from the banks is they want to be closer to the metal. They want to be closer to the control. And so their ability knowing that they can pick up the phone and say, hey, like this program isn't working. Um, and we want to change these levers, or they can just log into the dashboard and do it themselves. It really gives them the ability to have these conversations, to make those changes and really be at the forefront. Because again, all of the tech, the user experience, everything that end user is gonna see on their phone is all going to be embedded into one single set of technology. So there's no more, oh, we got to get a hold of somebody else to tell them to take their app down or worry about a business continuity plan if something goes. The bank is in full control of that technology through this. And so they really are getting even closer to the metal when it comes to having control over what that experience looks like. And I want to touch on one other thing that I think is really important with this, because I know some people might go, "Oh, 3 weeks. What are you skipping? What processes aren't you doing because this is so fast?" We're not skipping anything. Just to be clear, there is still due diligence done. Any of our banks that support Ready to Launch will do due diligence on each of these brands. There is not a world where a bank is not going to know and approve and have a contract with the co-branders that they are supporting. So if there is a name of a bank on a back of a debit card, and like that bank is going to know who that is, they're going to have underwritten them, they're going to know who they are. If they want to, like, they're going to meet each other, right? Like whatever that's going to look like, the bank is going to define what they want that process to look like to make sure they understand and have that relationship even beyond a contract with that particular co-brander. And now, is the due diligence going to be as significant if it was a custom program? No, because it's a box. They know what the limits are. They know where the tech stack is coming from. They know who the critical vendors are. They know the information security policy. Go through a full TPRM, operational compliance risk assessment. They already know all of those things for all of these co-branders because it's one tech stack that's already there. Essentially, what they're focused on is making sure that they understand who that co-brander is. Doesn't make sense that they want to offer a financial product or service and embed that. They're going to do a deep reputational risk assessment, right? And just make sure they understand who they're co-branding, because at the end of the day, it is the bank's product that they're offering. So it is a full due diligence packet. It's just many of the things that the bank would normally do the due diligence on, they already know because they've already done that due diligence on the program. And so it's just the pieces that are left, which we've reduced that risk. So you can do full due diligence in a very short period of time because the number of risk areas have been reduced.
Oriented answer. But I thank you for that, because no, it's important that everyone understands that you're still doing the work. You're still doing your job up front. You're allowing bankers to do it in a much more structured fashion where there's known variables in a less type of bespoke manner in the ready to launch world. So
And the banks,
By the way,
yeah, I want to put a highlight on it. It's the bank that's doing it, right? So whatever due diligence wants to do, like that's what they're gonna do. It's not unit.
Exactly. Were you going to say the
And
same thing, Michael?
I was going to say, Stacey, you said it's a compliance focused answer, and that might be true, but it's not because Amanda is our chief compliance officer. It's because this is something that we really care about within unit, and compliance has always been, top among our values as a company. It's built into everything we do. Our product team talks about compliance as much as our compliance team does. Um, and and we really, it's something we always talk about when we're building. So anyone else at Unit who you would talk to, I think would have given a similar answer about how we're thinking about that due diligence in the ready to launch context.
Well, I appreciate that because how vital is it? Because the bankers, if you're speaking to bankers, that is absolutely foremost in their mind. And that actually takes me to the next question. And Amanda, I might direct this one at you a bit because of your past experience working directly at a bank offering embedded banking, bank sponsorship. I guess when I'm speaking with community banks exploring the space, or Steve is in a conversation, we hear a lot of questions where people are hoping to disqualify banking as a service. Or to say it another way, we hear a lot of reasons why people would say no to embedded banking. I guess what I'm wondering, from your point of view, Amanda, like what are bankers, traditional community bankers, underestimating about the opportunity that exists within the embedded banking space? Any thoughts on that from you or Joe?
Yeah, I think that if we fast forward 5 years from now, it, it it is going to be very scary for a lot of banks because right now there is a knife fight going on in every local community to get your local customers, right? You have a subset of community banks in a general area,
Hmm.
and those people are then like that is your locked in demographic. In general, not always, but in general, online and digital banking platforms for a community bank are not great, right? They're subpar compared to your JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, US Bank, your very large top 50 banks have great tech, right? That comes with that. Your community banks are not going to win on that. And so they're in this relationship knife fight with each other to try to steal each other's customers and to be able to get the deposits and the loans. But at the end of the day, people don't want to walk into the bank. I have a 17-year-old. He does not want to go to a bank office. He wants to do everything right here on his phone. And so banking is becoming something that needs to be accessed in a highly digital way. Relationships still matter, but where the people that are becoming trusted and where those relationships matter are with the technology services that are running these businesses. If you're a restaurant, you are logging on to your restaurant operating system every single day to check your inventory, to check your payments, to check all of the things that you need to do. If your bank account can be tied into that right there to manage and embed to everything else, that's where you want your checking account because that's where you're spending all of your time. That's who your relationship is with. You're not going to have time to go to the community bank down the street to do that. You want it all tied in right there. And that's where the market's going. And we're seeing this day in and day out. Having an embedded product in a vertical SaaS company is table stakes. Like every company that's a major operating system, whether it's property management, restaurants, website development, anybody who offers software in these spaces are coming to us and they're saying we need to do this because customers want to be met where they're at. They don't want to be met at some place they have to drive to or get a subpar digital banking experience from. So the only way you're going to be able to reach these customers that are outside of your local community is by expanding your digital presence. The best way to expand your digital presence is in the embedded finance space. Because if you're a bank that has $1 billion, $2 billion in assets, you do not have the capital to invest in a massive tech stack to be able to do that. That's just not where you're going to put your capital. And you're not going to attract the best talent to be able to come in and be the engineers for that. Like top tech talent wants to work at tech companies. That's just the reality of it. And so when you can combine what the bank does really, really well, which is compliance, oversight, and all the banking things, along with really great technology, you can offer a really great service delivered right where that customer wants it, and that's where you're going to win. So if you're not in that space and you think it's too scary, then you have to be happy with the growth and what you have today, because you're like, I just don't see it growing. People want digital. And so embedded is a great way to go digital. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other places to grow, but I think that if you're scared and you're like, ooh, BaaS or ooh, embedded, I hate the word BaaS, by the way, embedded finance, like it's going to be problematic, I think, in a couple of years, because that's where the market, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but if I was starting a bank today, that would be very much my part of my strategy, whether it's lending, banking, any type of payment facilitation, because that's where that we see the demand every day.
You share the same thing with the intention of writing on the wall, with just where things were going. And I truly do think banking, when we think in terms of just banking, we're going to be thinking of embedded or banks. Traditional banking is going to become just traditional banking. We're just going to think of this as the way we do things. Well, I know we're kind of nearing the end of our time. Why don't, Steve, why don't we do some rapid fire questions? Do you want to ask maybe Joe one here, and we'll just see where we land with these folks?
I mean, we are running up on time. So speaking of, I'm actually gonna go back because Amanda had mentioned the 3 week process, and Joe, bankers aren't always known for their speed with which they take action. Um,
Mm.
so, I mean, is 3 weeks, is that realistic? And like, how have you had banks approach that?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to be realistic, and our goal is never to push the banks that we're working with. Um, uh, what we're seeing right now is 3 to 4 week launch timelines, because that's what our banks that are operating and supported ready to launch are able to do. And I think a lot of that goes back to what Amanda was saying in terms of the due diligence process. We are still going through a full due diligence on each and every one of the co-brand partners that are signing up through ready to launch. It's just that as Amanda was saying, such a large percentage of the program evaluation is consistent, from brand to brand. That I think it radically simplifies the amount of sort of evaluation and the timeline for evaluation that the banks have to do on each co-brand. Very, very, very critical that they still do it, and they do a high quality job of it. Um, but, that 3 to 4 timeline isn't something that we invented. It's generally what we're seeing in our partnership right now.
And it was bank approved for our marketing, by the way. So there's not a world where we came out with that without our bank saying you can say that.
Wasn't like pulled out of the air. Well, if I can reflect that back to you, the way I think about this is someone that has sold a lot of fintech over a lot of years. The way I'm hearing that is a banker is never going to be waiting on you to get a program up and running. You are going to be ready to go, ready to launch a new program once they have completed the appropriate due diligence and compliance related effort, is the way I'm interpreting that comment. Well, I'm gonna ask you some questions just about the industry overall and the way we should be thinking about this. So, Joe, you went last. Amanda, I'll direct this towards you. We have heard a lot about the terminology of embedded finance, and there's a lot of different ways people are referring to it, depending upon who you follow, whose newsletters you're reading or blogs. So I've heard things such as regulatory headache. I've heard things such as it's the future of banking, which I tend to be a bit more in that camp. I guess I'm interested. What do you think the market is getting wrong right now, or and what do you think that the market might be getting right on embedded banking? You can choose either side. You can be
Um,
positive.
yeah, I'm generally a pretty positive person, so I'll go positive. I think I think I think that we all learned a lot of lessons over the last couple years, And
Mm.
I am a firm believer that people want to do the right thing. People are trying to do the right thing every single day in this space. And you know, whenever something new comes and there's disruption in a system, taxis and Uber and Lyft, right? Blockbuster, right? There's the stories of all of this. We're in a moment of disruption, right? And as you go through a moment of disruption of how end users are going to consume a service, there's always going to be pain points that go through that. But I do think that people wanted to do this in a responsible way. Did some irresponsible things end up happening? Yes, they did, right? And I don't think anybody wanted that to happen. And I think a lot of the folks in this space are like, that can never, ever, ever happen again, and take it very, very seriously, and want to do the right thing. And I think that the regulators are wrapping their heads around it now. They understand that this is where the space is going, and so when industry and regulation and every party can work together and really have a positive view of like, this is good for the end user to improve financial access, we're all going to get to a good spot. Is there still going to be more headache and regulation we have to deal with along the way? Sure. That's always going to be the case. The mortgage industry had it. Everybody's had that over time. But I think everybody realizes this is happening. Nothing's going to stop it, and the it's moving, and it's honestly past embedded at this point, right? Now everybody's talking about stable coins and then in AI, right? So like, this moment is here and it's happening, and I think the next things that happen are already coming.
Yep. Yeah. Whenever cannabis thinking and even the top like headlines anymore, you know the industry has moved on into other things, and this is normal.
Yeah.
Steve, I'll let you ask the final question, Mr. Bishop,
Okay.
if I respect you
Well,
so much.
like Amanda pointed out AI, and at first I was a little disappointed that your big announcement wasn't that you were now an AI company, just like every other company out there. But no, um, very exciting stuff. If there's a banker looking to get started, wanting to learn more, where would you tell them to go, or what would be the next appropriate steps for them? Joe, do you want to take that?
Yep. Yeah, yeah. Our door is always open. I would say, reach out to us, reach out to me or Amanda. Um, I think there's, an incredible amount of resources out there that are available to banks that are interested in this space. But I think, as we talked about, right, there's the quality or the point of view on those different sources is sometimes unclear, and I think it tends to focus more on the negatives than the positives. Which, it's not that there's not challenges in our space, but I do think that there are companies and teams that are building with the right mindset, with the right approach, with the right technology, with a view to the future. And I'm hoping that amBaaSsador is a great source of information and point of view for those banks, and we hope to be as well. So yeah, we're open to any conversations anytime.
And I just thank you guys for what you're doing. It truly is amazing, to have advocates for banks in the ecosystem, and experts that can help sort through all of the questions that might be out there. So thank you for the work you're doing, and taking the risks you took to start the business.
Well, thank you both for joining us on this mission. And Unit team as a whole, I have to tell you guys, I am hoping this is the first of many types of just conversations we can have, because I have a list of questions. I know Steve does too, that we'd love to check back in with you on, see and celebrate the success of Ready to Launch and what Unit has going on. So don't be surprised whenever I reach back out and ask to have you guys join us again. In the meantime, though, I do also want to mention, please follow Unit, Joe, Amanda on LinkedIn, and also Amanda earning herself a panelist spot at the upcoming Finovate Fall meeting. So for those of you that are going to be at Finovate Fall, look for Amanda's smiling face, and I know she'd be willing to share her knowledge there as well. Not to put you on the spot there, Amanda, but I just did.
I'll talk compliance anytime.
Well, ooh, we'll talk compliance. All right. over a coffee, I'm sure. No, at any rate, though, you guys, thank you so much for the time today. Look for more information coming from Joe, Amanda, and the unit team in the future. They are phenomenal sponsors and advocates for this space because they want community bankers like you to know that this is a solution that could be available for your organization. We hope you will consider embedded banking and banking as a service as a possible route for your future success. The answer is no, that's okay. Let's just make sure it's an educated no. That's all I ask of each of us. And with that, you all, I'm going to wish you all a great day. Thanks so much from the ambassador team and our unit our unit folks as well out here. With that, bye-bye, everyone.